did the Russia collusion story come from at the beginning? Well, it was rooted as a story in the publication of thousands of leaked emails from the DNC, a lot of which embarrassed the Hillary campaign. That set of emails, and emails from John Podesta's personal Gmail account, were stolen by Russia and given to WikiLeaks in London. That was the story. Anyone who questioned it was attacked. When we asked a question about it, Adam Schiff himself suggested we must be Russian agents. Look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email.
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe.
Okay, you're not, you know what, you're dodging.
And Tucker,
no, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails, they hacked those.
And I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over his grave at your carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the you're making, look, you're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked.
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television.
So he wouldn't say it because he knew it wasn't true. And now there's accumulating evidence that, in fact, it wasn't true. That Russia didn't do that. It's not a defense of Russia, it's a fact. The FBI never directly inspected the DNC's servers for evidence of Russian hackers. They took the word of a private company called Crowdstrike. You know the story. But in recently declassified House testimony, Crowdstrike's CEO admitted there was no proof that Russia did that. Julian Assange, by the way, who runs WikiLeaks, has always denied that Russian hackers got him the emails. And yet here's something very odd. The Mueller team never interviewed Julian Assange. He wanted to be interviewed. They didn't. Why not? Well, you know why. Because the truth was never the point. Glenn Greenwald co-founded The Intercept. We disagree probably on a lot politically, but from day one, he has taken an enormous amount of abuse for being skeptical of the Russia story. And we're happy to have him on tonight. So, Glenn, I can't get past this one question, and I think you probably know more about this than anybody I know personally. The question of how did these emails get from the DNC server to WikiLeaks? And it's starting to look like maybe they were leaked by a DNC staffer who was mad that the Hillary campaign was siding with the DNC. Do you think that's how they got there? How did they get to WikiLeaks?
I don't think we know. And that was the point all along. The original heresy in Russiagate that got many of us expelled from the halls of decent liberal company was questioning the declaration from security state agencies who have a history of lying, declaring definitively that Russia was behind the hacks. And all you had to do in order to be declared a heretic in journalism was to say, you know what, I'd actually like to see some evidence for that. I'm not saying it couldn't have happened or that it's beyond the realm of plausibility. Russia does stuff like that. So does the U.S. But before I believe that, I'd actually like to see some evidence from that. And we got the kinds of responses that you just showed with Adam Schiff, accusing you of being a Kremlin pawn or a Kremlin asset or disloyal or unpatriotic for wanting to see the evidence. And as it turns out, there is some relevant evidence to that question, but it was hidden for years until just recently, namely that the head of Crowdstrike, the only entity that was actually able to examine the servers, admitted in closed hearings before the House that there is no concrete evidence that Russia, in his words, exfiltrated those emails. He said there's indicia of it, there's circumstantial evidence for it, but there's no hard, concrete, scientific evidence the way we were told for 3 years existed and that we all had to unquestioningly swallow. And the amazing thing is very few people have talked about that incredibly important aspect of that testimony that utterly erodes the core initial premise of the entire 3 years that dominated our political discourse. The media has just utterly ignored it.
Very quickly, by the way, if you hear dogs barking in the background, it's because Glenn Greenwald runs a dog shelter out of his house.
It's because Tucker has a lot of dogs who are poorly behaved.
I love that. Very quickly, Julian Assange was at the very center of the story. His organization, WikiLeaks, ran these emails, which started the whole story. Why didn't Mueller or Andrew Weissman, or why didn't somebody from the investigation ever interview him?
Well, I mean, I think it's reasonable to say that even if Julian Assange believes that the people who gave him those emails weren't part of the Russian government, that isn't at all proof that it wasn't the Russians who did the hacking. They could have easily done the hacking and then given it to somebody else to give to Julian Assange. But if you're investigating a crime in which emails end up illicitly with a group that publishes them, obviously you want to talk to that person about how they got them and who gave it to them.
Exactly.
And he was pleading to be interviewed, and they just refused.
They interviewed a woman I know because she was at a party with someone else they were interested in. But they didn't interview Julian Assange. Tells you everything. Glenn Greenwald, great to see you. And God bless you for helping.
Great to talk to you, Tucker.
Thanks.